For the past 3 years of my life, I have completely stopped trying to get a girlfriend. And it's not because I gave up on dating or I hate women, because that's definitely not the case, but it's because I personally started feeling like I wasn't good enough. And what really bothered me, that I realized freshman year of my college career, is that my standards for a potential partner and girlfriend were higher than my standards for myself. And a good example of this is that when you want a high value partner, you need to be a high value person yourself. And a great way to think about this that I heard online is if you wouldn't date the partner version of yourself, or if you wouldn't date yourself, you need to increase your standards for yourself and grow as a person so that they can meet the standards that you have for a partner. And I realized that my standards for a partner were higher than the standards I had for how I viewed myself. And this was harshly shown to me when I dealt with a situationship my freshman year of college. And if you're unaware with what a situationship is, it's basically like a pseudo relationship, a relationship that you're actually not exclusive with each other, but one person usually wants to be. A good example of this is one person's chasing somebody while they're running away. So you're constantly chasing them, but they're just running away from you. And it's this constant painful cycle where one of you wants to date, but the other one doesn't really. And if you can't tell, I was the one chasing my freshman year during that situationship. And so after I dealt with that, I realized that my standards for myself were bottom of the barrel, but my standards for somebody else were potentially high. But at the same breath, the person I was pursuing was a low standard person. So the main problem was I realized that I didn't have self-respect for myself. And then that's when I decided that maybe self-improvement was a good option, and that maybe dating should take a back burner, and I should focus on myself and isolate myself and go on this giant self-improvement journey to improve the standards of myself. And this self-improvement journey was good and bad. I talk about it a lot on this channel, about how I think self-improvement is a dangerous trap for a lot of people, and specifically a lot of young men like myself. And specifically on a dating standpoint, it can be even more destructive. And it was pretty destructive for me. But I'll explain the good things that came from it first, and then I'll get into the really bad stuff. The good stuff was that when I was isolated on a routine, a really difficult routine I may add, I built a lot of discipline because I was doing hard things every day. I built a lot of confidence in myself for being able to stick with something that was difficult, this really treacherous routine. And just by being by myself, I learned a lot about myself. Just because I wasn't having a lot of external stimulation from others, from other opinions, from new friends, whatever it was, I spent a lot of time just in my own head. And those three things were really helpful. But there were a lot of negative things that came from it too. And those negative things are the things that I remember the most, just because they're negative. But the main thing is that my social skills dramatically dropped. And they declined within the first month of this self-improvement journey. And I realized that I had a lot of trouble talking to women. And that caused me to realize that maybe self-improvement wasn't a good idea to start for a goal of dating a high-value person. Because I started to realize that being on this isolation journey caused me to forget kind of how to date. And that skill, the whole point of dating somebody high value, you need to know how to date. And I realized that skill was plummeting fast because I was isolating myself. And that was probably the worst part about it. And I also just caused myself a lot of internal stress from trying to be perfect, trying to be better than I was before. I always told myself that I wanted to be a high value man, which insinuates that I was a low value man before I started the self-improvement journey, and that's why I was on it. And there were a lot of these negative emotions that came from the self-improvement journey because of that stuff. All because I wanted to date somebody that was high value. And I started to realize that the self-improvement journey that I was on was actually really damaging because I wasn't focusing on the internal growth that you need to do in order to find somebody high value. The whole point of self-improvement, when you do it right, is so that you grow internally, aka so that your value goes up, so that you actually become somebody of high value, so that you attract somebody of high value, which is what the whole thing about high standards is. And so I started to realize that I was focusing too much on external validation and becoming somebody who had a bunch of materialistic stuff, somebody who looked better, somebody who had money, somebody, all that BS. But when you focus on growing internally so that your standards for yourself go up, all of that external stuff, the really pretty partner, the money, the physique, all that stuff happens as a byproduct. If you just first start by growing internally. And that's what I wish I would have done differently. And so this self-improvement journey spanned the rest of college. And my social skills completely declined. And I did grow internally a little bit. And that's how I realized that should be the main goal for anybody else out there going on a self-improvement journey, is to grow internally. That's what I wish I would have done better. And I'm just now really starting to get my social skills back after all these years. And so the main takeaway in one sentence is you need to go on a self-improvement journey to where you are building yourself internally, but also be willing to find a partner during that time, because the right person will build with you. The right person that what you will date, who is high value, will be willing to build with you on your self-improvement journey, and you can work together. That is how marriages and relationships last for a long time. That is the takeaway of this video, and that's what I wish I would have done differently. Thank you for watching.